Welcome to Carpspiration, Taska's first UK DVD. You join us here at Thorpe, one of the country's prolific day ticket venues. As with many of the day ticket venues in the country, you get the noise of the motorway, the planes going across, plenty of other anglers on the lake. But we managed to get one out. Not the biggest in the lake, probably not the prettiest, but we've got some action. So a great start to the DVD. Later on you'll see some footage from Osiers. The lads went and had some great fun in the summer, plenty of surface action. And then they moved on to brocard, had some cracking French fish. So we're going to show you some tips, some tactics and some of the products we use to catch these fish throughout the DVD. I hope you enjoy it. Going to get this one back and see if we can have some more.
I turned up quite late last night. Light was just fading. I didn't have a lot of time to get the rods out, but I managed to do it. Andrew had already caught a fish. This gave me a lot of hope for the night. I decided to opt for one bite tactics. I went for one rod on the zig. In the last few years, it has become clear that fish spend a lot of their time in the middle layers of the water. And the pressure is also high, that makes me think they might be in the middle layers. So I put one rod out on the zig. My other rod was out on a small PVA bag with some maggots, about 80 yards range where I think the fish will be. So it's nice and clear out there. I have fished here before, but it was a lot warmer when I fished here. I'm gonna work the swim today, keep a little bit of bait going in, a few maggots over the top of the zig and the rod on the bottom, see if I can't winkle one out.
When I got here I was lucky enough to chat with Lee, local coach. Created quite an accurate picture of what's out in front of us. Maximised on that and put a lead out straight away at what he was saying, the sort of range. Found some lovely clear spots, real soft silt, and then comes up really rapidly onto a gravel bar to no less than 18 inches of water on top. Coming back then into some quite thick weed beds. So I chucked a couple of singles out over the back of the bar, sat in the silt nicely, felt them down lovely and soft, thought great. Put 3 or 4 kilos of spombs over the top of it, I reckon, over a couple of hours. And then religiously every couple of hours kept topping up with another couple of spombs. Managed to induce a bite, so it's not been too bad so far. Keep getting the bait in, just put some new rigs out. Quite hopeful, quite confident. It's going to get cold again tonight. Last night was quite a good frost, so plenty of layers, wrapped up nice and warm. We're going to be alright. Let's catch a couple more fish.
At prolific day ticket venues such as Thorpe, it's important to keep the bait going in at consistent and regular intervals. Even in the winter, there's always going to be competition for food as there's such a high stock of fish in these types of waters. So when I turn up, even if it's in the warmer months, I might put out 20 spombs of bait. In the winter, I'll tend to half it and maybe even half it again. So this session, I started off by putting a couple of singles out just to gauge whether there's any fish in the swim or whether I could get a quick bite. The first night passed by with no action. I didn't have no liners. I didn't see any fish, so it was time to get the bait going in and bring them to me. Started off with about 10 midi spombs of just boilie. I tend to avoid particle in the colder months. It can definitely work, but my personal preference is just to stick with like a milk protein, nutty flavoured boilie. As it's what I've always used and it has done well for me in past winters. So as I say, I started off with about 10 midi spombs, and then 4 hours later another 3, and then 4 hours later another 3, and I just keep going until, you know, the fish turn up in the swim. And if you can keep the bait going in, once you've got them in your swim, that's when you start to get your big hits of fish. But as of yet, we haven't had any action, so I think, you know, I'm just going to keep plugging away, and hopefully it will not be long before I have a fish on the bank.
So I'm just going to talk you through my distance setup that I'm using. I've got a 3.5 ounce distance lead, and that's just got a quick link underneath there, so it's just quick linked on, and that's just on a naked style setup. What I've done, I've put a bit of drop 'em on my main line there for about 1 metre, just to keep that pin down a little bit more. That goes up to a baseline tungsten heli chod system, and that keeps my chod rig just nipped in place there. Obviously if it breaks off, it's perfectly fish safe, so it's still a nice way of just keeping it in a nice semi-fixed position. That goes down to a baseline tungsten chod swivel bead. That's instead of putty, because obviously in the colder weather putty can be a bit of a nightmare, so this is a lot less fiddly and it's just as effective. And then I've got a real nice high attract hook bait. It's a nice bright yellow pop-up, super buoyant as well, and a high leakage. And then what I've done is I've super glued some maggots to the end, and that's just going to give a little bit more attraction. Obviously it might pick up the little nuisance fish trying to have a go, but there's nothing more carpy and winning than perch anyway. So growing up, going into carp fishing, it was always about fishing heavily stocked venues for like big hits of fish. It was always great fun to catch more fish than your mate, so it got a little bit competitive, and we sort of learned very quickly that it was important to fish accurately and consistently at that range. So baiting patterns and like getting like nice little patches of bait out there, that was always important, and it always produced more bites than it scattering it around everywhere, especially if it was a little bit further out than the range of most other people on the lake. You'd always stand a bit better chance, obviously, because the fish feel a little bit safer out there, really, so they're more inclined to feed at that sort of range further than other people. So being accurate, I was sort of always trying to find a way to get bites, and range sticks were sort of coming out at that time, and learning to use them, that paid off massively, because you could always clip your rod up at the right range, clip like your spot and marker up at the same range, and you could always get it on the spot every time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clip this rod up here at 30 wraps, which is about 120 yards. Obviously depends a little bit on the length of your rod. And then I'm going to take down to the front of the swim, I'm going to get the rod out, and hopefully we can get a bite. So I'm going to get this rod out now. Obviously I've taken a few precautions just to make sure that I'm comfortable hitting the clip at that range. So I've taken my big coat off because it was restricting me a bit. It's still cold, but I'll coat for a few minutes. Then I've got my casting glove on. It features a nice leather finger stool, and then it's got a nice comfortable palm grip, unlike other conventional finger stools on the market. Then I've got my nice 3.5 ounce distance lead up to my setup. It's important to have a nice rod and reel that's comfortable with of achieving what you want it to be able to do. So I'm going to get the rod out now, and hopefully we can pick a fish up off it.
Just talk you through the rig that I've been using while we're at Thorpe. Couldn't be any simpler really. Just a lead clip, 3.5 ounce lead, about 8 inches of silkworm with a bit of dropping on it just to pin it down. Got a large Taska sinker and a cut down with a curve liner there. Size 7 hook. Simple mechanics, whatever way that bait's going to go is going to turn the hook when it gets sucked. Gone for a little bright pop-up on the top just to give it a little bit more visual attraction. We've got plenty of maize and that in the mix, so just trying to match that a bit better and hopefully pick up one of these fish that are proving quite difficult to catch for us all at the minute. But we're going to keep at it and get this back out, and yeah, we'll see what happens.
Right, so I continued on with the baiting strategy that I spoke to you about earlier on. At first light this morning, started getting a couple of liners, so I didn't bother baiting up. And then just before it actually got light, this one rattled off. A lovely 24.5 mirror. And about half hour after that, the other rod rattled off, just as I was getting this one sorted. And it's a little bit bigger, and that's sitting down in the edge. So I think we're gonna get this one back, go and get the other one out, because it is a very, very nice fish. And here she is, 31.25 pound of Thorpe mirror. It's a great example of some winter fishing that you can have at this place. My hands are absolutely freezing and feel like they're about to fall off, so I think it's time to get her back. But it just shows that with the right amount of bait and the right bait application, you can definitely have some great results in the colder months. Yeah, boy.
Bite indicator situation is even more important in the colder months because you're targeting less active fish. In this situation, I've opted for a semi-tight line. This benefits me in several ways. If the fish are in the area, I'll receive line bites, but in this situation, I'll receive line bites at 22 wraps. This made me believe that the fish may be closer in than the 22 wraps, so I dropped one back to 16 just to try and find out where the fish are. Often in the winter, fish can be grouped up, so if you're getting line bites, they're definitely out in front of you. On this session, I've chosen riser lights. As the name suggests, they are very light. This allows me to fish a semi-tight line, but also leaving a majority of my line near the bottom. Fishing that semi-tight line gives me the best bite indication and will register even the smallest of bites at the ranges we're fishing. Because there's a bit of weed out there, I'm fishing the rods completely locked up. This will encourage a fish to come up in the water when I get a bite. This also means I need a very rigid setup. I've chosen the A-type. Even at full extension, it's still a solid setup due to its dynamic profile. So that's that. It's all sat there looking pretty, ready for when the rod rips off.
So winter fishing. Harry's just well and truly shown us how it's done. Lovely brace of a 25 and a 30. Looked really cold holding the fish, I've got to say. We have had some nice cold evenings and certainly some frosty mornings. We've had a -2 and a -4 last night. It did get really cold. Just take a couple of seconds to tell you how I keep warm and stay comfortable in the winter. Winter time for me is when I do most of my fishing. A lot of my other commitments have ended with the summer. There's a lot less people on the banks as well, so it's a great time for me to come and try and catch some fish. But it's no good if you're cold, if you're uncomfortable, you're not going to fish effectively. Just quickly to start then, I mean, you've got to go for a good boot, a nice solid, warm, waterproof boot. Don't be lazy, just throw your feet in there, do the laces up, keep your ankles all nice and snug. Work your way up then with some nice layers, some long johns or thermals. You want to choose a material that wicks the sweat away from your body, you don't want to get wet and stay wet. Plenty of layers over trousers, jumpers, coats, hats. You all want to be waterproof, windproof, and you'll stay comfortable. Plenty of brews, stay hydrated. I know it's cold and it's not very nice drinking cold water, but I always take a couple of litres of water just to stay hydrated. Once you start to lose your body's moisture, you do start to get cold and uncomfortable. And another great side about winter fishing is winter socials. You get a lot of darkness. We were dark at about 4:30 last night until about 7 o'clock this morning. It's too easy to just get in your sleeping bag and hide away from it. But if you're with a couple of mates sat around chatting, it keeps you fishing. I mean, my baiting campaign for this weekend was to just keep trickling baiting every couple of hours. And if I'd have got into bed, there's nowhere I'd have been getting out to go and chuck a couple of spombs out. So I think that pays off as well. We've been a bit unfortunate with the amount of fish we've had. We've had a few chances, and there's a few fish being banked, so it hasn't been a complete write-off. But stay warm. Enjoy winter fishing. It's a lovely time of year to be out, and get out and do it. Cheers.
Right, so I had a great result this morning with that brace, 31 and 25. I'm absolutely over the moon. So I'm just going to take a bit of time to just run you through the rig that I had it on. It was the chod rig, and a lot of people, you know, fish a chod rig about an inch, maybe an inch and a half. But with mine, I like to tie them up very short, so it's almost just like a normal pop-up rig, except on a setup that you can cast an extremely long way. So first, I'll start off by just cutting off a piece of chod filament. This is 15 £. It's plenty strong enough. Give yourself plenty to work with. So now it's just a case of tying a chod style hook on with a knotless knot. So with my chod rigs on a knotless knot, I like to do about 7 turns, so it allows you to have a nice big D to attach your threaded bait ring. Next step is just to attach or thread on a threaded bait ring onto the tag end of where your hair rig would normally be, then bend it back through the eye, put it nice and tight, and then use a lighter just to blob down the tag end. And probably leave yourself with about 4 mil, so you can pull it back through and shape the D. Right, the next step, what you want to do, slide your chod swivel bead right up to the eye of the hook, and then you want to attach size 11 flexi ring swivel and tie a 2-turn blood knot to the smallest eye on the swivel. A 2-turn blood knot should be plenty, because I will blob down the tag end after as well, just to ensure that it won't slip. It does take a bit of time, so you know, just be patient and get it right and make sure it's nice and neat. Once you've got the knot tied, you want to pull down as tight as you can on the tag end, because we want the chod rig to be as short as we can. Well, that's how I like to fish them anyway. So the tighter you can get that tag end pulled down, the shorter it's going to be. And once you've done that, you just want to completely tighten the knot using a couple of puller tools. It can be quite fiddly doing it with your hands. Trim the tag end, leave yourself about 1 centimetre, so then you can also blob that down too, stop the knot slipping. You don't want to be losing fish with knot slipping. Chod bead will then just nicely slide down over the eye on the swivel, and then it's just simply a case of screwing on one of your favourite hook baits. In the winter, like we are now, in my opinion, you can't beat a nice little 10mm tootie or a pineapple. Fruity baits are definitely the way to go. So all you've got to do is simply just screw it on to the threaded bait ring. Saves the need for, you know, messing around with bait floss. You don't really want to be trying to do that with cold hands. And just use the inside of your index finger just to give it a nice little bend. Makes the rig nice and aggressive, so when a carp comes and picks up your hook bait, it's not getting away with that. So there we have it, a nice little short chod rig, a rig that you can cast on a distance setup, well over 100 yards even with fluorocarbon, like I've been doing this session. So yeah, give it a try and see how you get on.
That's about it from us at Thorpley. It's been a really challenging couple of days. We've had some horrendous temperatures, as I mentioned earlier. Real strong northeasterly wind as well, which has kept us on our toes. But we've stayed comfortable, we've stayed warm. We've certainly had a giggle between us and managed to catch a fish in these adverse conditions, which is always a result. As I say, we're pretty much it. All's left us to do is pack up and get on the road home. We'll leave you on to the next section of the DVD, where you've got Jerry, Benedict and Keith out in Brocard catching some stunning French fish a little earlier on in the summer. This about wraps up the year for us now at winter, so I hope you enjoy the rest of the DVD. Use some of the tips, some of the tactics that we've gone through, and see if you can catch some winter fish. Cheers guys.
Welcome to section 2 of Carpspiration. You're joining us in the deepest part of the Champagne region in France. Behind us over here is Brocard Large. It's a big 39-acre lake that is quite a challenge, and we'll get to that later on in the video. It's not an easy water, it's not a runs water, but if you get everything right, it can be very prolific. Joining us this week, we have French carp commercial extraordinaire, Keith Williams. Also, we have up-and-coming young gun, Benedict Fowler. He is young, but he's a more than capable angler. We have the full complement of the Taska crew here. So we have Chris Bell, we have Harry Law, and we have Tom Morrison. And then there's myself, Jerry Heaps, and I'm from Dublin and Ireland. So I had a bit of a trek to get over here. We travelled through the early hours and arrived this morning at silly o'clock. We decided to get some kip by the van, and then when we woke up we got some brilliant hospitality from Mark, the fishery manager here. After that we did a once round the lake and we picked our swims. So without further ado, let's go and meet the lads.
Hectic like last night, 5 fish. This is the best of the bunch, just mid-20. 1 o'clock this morning, I had a 35-pound mirror. Caught my favourite rig, long hairs, baseline products. Awesome night, more to come.
Well, last night on Brocard turned out to be very busy. After a long journey, I managed to have 6 bites. I lost the first 4, but I managed to land the last 2 after making a couple of little rig tweaks. So what I'm going to do now is try and get the rods back out on the money and try and catch some more fish.
Right, this is swim 11. When we arrived yesterday, we had a chat with Mark, the head bailiff. He gave us a rundown of where's fish and where's not. And this was one of the hot swims last week, so we decided that we'd have a bit of a draw. I came out first, jumped in it naturally. All the other lads have managed to pull out a fish so far, except for me. When I got to this swim, I was told it was shallow, but I didn't realise how shallow it was. It's not much of a challenge for me because back in Ireland where I normally do my fishing, a lot of the lakes we fish tend to be quite shallow and silty, so this swim suits my strengths. I'm well used to fishing in areas like this. So there was a wee bed on the far side. I was told to sort of put my baits up against it, and that's where the angler last week was doing a bit of action. But having been out there, it is really shallow. The deeper water tends to be along the marginal shelf running up the bank here, and when you go out in your chesties, it comes right up to the lip. Harry, who's in the next swim after a day's filming yesterday and doing bits and pieces, he managed to chuck out his rods last night and he just flicked them out not too far out, 25-30 yards out. Spread a bit of bait and he managed a couple of bites. So I feel that maybe hanging away from the weed beds and bringing the rods into this more deeper area, that's where the fish are going to be. So as I said, I've moved all my rods in. I've had a bit of a tactical change, but if I have another sort of 20 hours in this swim and I don't get another fish or another bite, or don't get any indication that I'm doing something right, then I may have to think about moving. And that's something that's so important when you're fishing in France. You do come with everything and the kitchen sink. You've got to be able to get on your toes and move to where the fish are. There's no point in wasting a full week in a swim that's dead. So as I said, we'll come back and we'll see how we're doing later on. But at the moment, it's a little bit on the quiet side. Lads on the far side, not so much. They're caning it.
Well, here's the rig I use for France, most venues now. We've got a 15mm boilie with a dumbbell cut in half, blowback rig with a liner that's been chopped. An inch from that, we've got an oval bead with a little sinker halfway down with an anti-tangle sleeve, which is baseline. This is perfect because you've got a longer hair. You want this in a... But it's on that long hair, blowback style, 6-7 inch hook link. Just works everywhere I use it. Still pulling really well. It's probably about 70 yards out now. Get it side strained, just keep it away from the side of these bushes here. Trying to keep it right at the middle there so it doesn't kite round. If I keep the rod down low, it does keep it out there. Just trying to avoid the other lines, but the good thing about deceptive line, it sinks really well. When it gets a bit nearer, what I tend to do is drop the bail arm. It's now just starting to kite around, so I could keep that tip way down. I've got marks to go out with the waders because the water's so shallow. If there's a decent fish, you need to just go out there. It's not fair on the fish to drag it over the silt. And now it's going to be in the net. Cheers, Mark. Well, the fish are back on the feed. Just been putting bait out there consistently during the day. Seen a couple of fish crash. Slow take. We've got this lovely beauty here, probably mid-20 to 27 pound. Caught in the rig I showed you earlier. So get this one back and we get the baits back out. Well, I just put the carp back, and what has made it, just found in my sling, this carp has coughed up a small dead roach. And this is not the first time it's happened to me in France. I've had them on fry in my sling before, but you can see this has been partly digested. And you see they will still feed on roach and other bits that a lot of anglers don't realise. So, you know, if you see like a roach flying around, it could be carp in your swim. Okay, I fish in France a lot, and this is the rig I always use. It's absolutely perfect for the job on most lakes. Even in England I use this, but it's simple, long hair, if you look with a curve hook. I always use it at blowback style because if I do get done at night or during the day, it always reset itself. So the first part of it is hybrid boilie with a tiny little bit of yellow dumbbell just to turn it. Then we've got some baseline aligners, which has been chopped. Then you've got 6mm oval bead and a little sinker, and to finish off the tungsten anti-tangle sleeve. Why I think this works so well is if you look at carp in France, they've got really big mouths, and what I want to do is that part of the bait down its throat so I can get a real good hook hold. Very strong fish, and you look at most French lakes, they're quite shallow, so this is a perfect rig for most lakes in France, and I've used this for 3 to 4 years now, and I won't change it, and it just catches me all the time. Very simple, easy to tie. Try it yourself.
After a tough 2 days, action around the whole lake picked up last night. Everyone's caught fish. Here's my first one of 2. I think the rain switched them on, so I'm going to get this one back, show you the other fish and get my rods back out, and hopefully I'll show you a few more fish. Right, the lads are in the swim. The rod's ripped off again. She's just getting close to the net. So I'm going to continue wading out into some deeper water just so I can try and get the net under a little bit more, because we got very high silt here. You see it's a lovely common. And there we go, she's in the net. Before I even had time to get the other fish out of the water, this rod was away in the shape of this lovely mid-20 common. It just shows that fishing accurately at range can be a great way to build up a big hit of fish. The other fish is a 33-pound mirror. I mean, I'm ecstatic. 3 fish in a morning, what a result.
Brocard's one of our medium-sized lakes. There's fish run into Brocard the right time of year to about 60 pounds. It is quite heavily stocked, obviously, because if people are on holiday, they want to catch fish. Plenty of 30s and 40s to go at, 20s in there to cover it. Everything from big grasses, koi, and the whole place is made in the woods, as you've probably seen since you've been going around. That makes the anglers feel as if they're in the wilderness, but along with that we've got toilet facilities, shower facilities and electric on site. So it just makes the anglers feel more comfortable. So it's just a decent all-round place to come and spend a holiday. What I would say before they leave home, there's nothing special to bring in with, you know, tackle-wise. Bring what you use in England, so just make sure you know it's a silty lake, so you bring adequate helicopter rigs or plenty of leads, you know, everything you can, a range of leads. So don't just bring your big leads, bring your small leads as well. A lot of people come to France, they try and cast as far as they can, when a lot of times the fish are that pressured, they'll go under your tips because they know they're out of the way. I will say step up hook size. So most of the hooks I use are size 4s, where in the UK I'd be using 6s and 8s. Since I've moved to France, 4's common practice for me. And a pair of binoculars. Most people come on holiday and the last thing they do is bring a pair of binoculars when they can be the biggest aid you've got. So I would say that. And people in Europe, since I've been again, they use a lot of bait boats. Bait boats are fine, I don't have a problem with bait boats. We don't on any of the lakes, you can use them. But as again, try and be different. The fish know a small clump of bait can be dangerous. So spread your bait out, boily fish. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing. Try and do everything what nobody else is doing. And then you'll have a good week at Brocard. Well, if I'm fishing at Brocard, what I tend to do, obviously first locate the fish. If I just have to jump into a swim, I'll try and find the siltiest part of the lake or the siltiest part of my swim. I like fishing silt, I like fishing weed. So I'll look for the silt and the weed, fish crashing overnight. If I don't put my rods out all night just to wait for fish crashing, fair play. If you're here for a week and you've got the time to spend, you're better off spending the day getting onto the fish, making them feel comfy in your swim than just ramming baits at them and waiting for them to swim and grab a hook bait when you could spend 24 hours, put a bit of bait in, watch the fish, get a big hit of fish quick. So I've proved it a few times on Brocard. The first time I fished Brocard was in swim 12 last September, doing 14 fish in a couple of nights. Second time I fished Brocard, I went to 12 again. And had 24 fish in less than 19 hours of fishing. So the plan works most of the time. And I would say if you are coming to Brocard, don't always think down the same lines as you would for most holiday places and just throw your rods in. Do what you do in England. That's the best advice I can give to people. Don't think because you're coming to France you have to change everything, you don't. Do what you're doing in England, step up a hook size and everything's happy. 18, 20 mil baits, I don't use them, I use 10s, 12s and 14s. It's opposite to everybody else. I think the highlights are in the winter, so over winter every lake we own, because we're a fish farming company as well, gets drained. I think some of the highlights are seeing some of the stunning fish in all the lakes, and to top that, going to Lahore North and the South Lake while it's drained, seeing the lake drained, and then selecting fish for anglers to come to Lahore to catch is an experience you couldn't explain to somebody. Sitting in England, looking in magazines, never having the time to go to France, always wanting to go and see how things are done out here, and now I'm in the middle of it and I'm doing it, it's a world apart from whatever I thought that I'd be doing. So yeah, the highlights that I have are mostly netting. Yeah, fishing sometimes comes into it, but I think in this sort of career, the job's not just about fishing. It's about everything that goes into making everybody happy, and the netting is a massive part of that. So I think that's the highlight that I've done. So yeah, it's brilliant.
Right, last time you saw me I was in swim 11. Obviously that I'm not there now. I've moved, and the reason being I tried everything in that swim, but the biggest problem for me was I just couldn't see any fish in the area. I did a lap last night at the lake and I found fish in this corner, and I came back again first light, had another look, and they were all over this spot. So what I did was I upped sticks and moved everything. Now the biggest problem when you're in France is that when you go, you take everything for a week's fishing and extras. So by the time you set up your base camp, it's, you know, you've got a lot of kit. The worst thing you can do in France is say, that's it, I'm not gonna move. If you're not on fish, you can't catch. So what I did was I found a fish, packed everything away at first light this morning. I got up really early as it was still dark, packed everything away into the back of the van, trundled around here. Within an hour, I was set up. And I'm feeling a lot more confident, and that's the great thing about moving. If you're stuck in a swim where you've had no action and you move, you get this sort of re-energizing of your fishing head. You know, you get the mojo back, and that's what's happened to me. I'm now in a new spot, I'm feeling energized, I know exactly where my baits are going to go. I've already put the baits out now, and I'm feeling ultra confident. I wasn't confident in the other swim. So I'm going to take you now to the front of the swim where I'm going to show you where I've picked my spots and my reason and my thinking behind it. Right, the rods are out fishing, and one thing I didn't want to do is make the same mistakes as I made the first time round in swim 11. Up there I was doing a lot of wading to drop bait and feed, and I'm not going to make that mistake here. I do think that the fish know when people are out in the chesties, so I'm keeping out of the water. So what I've done is I'm going to try and fish it more English style and fish for a bite at a time. Now there are occasions when, you know, you can turn up to a lake and fill in a swim and it will switch the fish on, but they are actually few and far between, and a lot of people make that mistake when they come to France, that they arrive and think that, you know, the more food they put out, the bigger hit they're going to have, and that's just not the case. As I said, in extreme circumstances that can work for you, but it is a rarity. So what I'm going to do is, or my plan for this particular spot, is to fish for a bite at a time. By that I mean a small amount of bait around a hook bait, and every time I pick up a fish, I'll just increase the amount of feed into that area, just a fraction, so maybe to trigger more of an aggressive feeding situation. So my right hand rod, I decided to put off a weed bed. When I got here, it was a little bit calmer than this, and there was a nice big patch of fizz coming up where something was having a real stir around on the bottom. I sent the bait boat out, and I'm using the bait boat to actually hit these spots, so I'm not in the water and I'm not having to cast and spook fish. Sent out the bait boat, and as I dropped the bait, there was a massive big bow wave, spooked whatever was under the fizzing bubbles, and off it went and pushed a fair bit of water, so it indicated to me that it was a fairly decent fish. Now, something can be learnt from that. We know this is a shallow spot or a shallow part of the lake, but it was obviously deep enough where I dropped it that a fairly biggish fish was feeding upended, and the tail wasn't smacking out the water. So I know we've got at least a couple of feet of water there. So I'm happy with that rod. My middle rod went straight out to, there's a depression in the lake bed where you basically have a channel that runs from the top corner where the water runs into the lake, and it runs all the way down to the bottom end here where there's a sluice. Now the channel, as I said, is about 80 yards out, and it's slightly deeper than the rest of the lake. And again, that's always going to be a hot spot for bigger fish that are going to run along it. So I've basically taken the bait boat and dropped it out about 80 yards. My left-hand rod was a no-brainer. When I was setting up the other two rods, a fish boshed out twice. First one, it was clean out of the water. The second was a head and shoulders. Now, one thing, you know, anybody who knows their stuff about carp will tell you that if you've got one showing fish, there's at least 2 to 3 other fish underneath him that aren't showing. So you've got fish in the area. So that, I was really lucky because the bait boat was ready to go. And as he came out the second time, I was able to send out the boat and drop the bait right in the rings of where he was. Because as I said, when I was putting out the baits this morning, it was flat calm. So they're the 3 spots and the thinking behind them. You know, one to a weed bed, there was a fish feeding in that area already this morning, so I know it's a natural feed zone. The second one's gone out to a depression that's out about 80 yards out, and the other one was on top of a fish showing. And that's a good starting point. Now, obviously, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to watch the water. That's one thing that most people tend to do, think they're on holidays, they're going to sit around, you know, have a few tins of whatever, and that's a mistake. You need to be watching the water and work your fishing. French fish are not easy fish, especially commercial fishing. These fish have seen it all and had it all, and to be honest with you, they're under as much pressure as most English fisheries. So you need to be on top of your game. I know it's a holiday and I know you want to relax, but if you want to catch your fair share of fish, you need to work at your angling. Watching all the time on the water is going to make a big help, because it's going to show you where they are. And if they keep popping up in the same spots, that's where you need to be having your baits.
The fishing slowed up here at Brockhard. The fish seem to have moved down the other end of the lake. So what I'm going to do is take this opportunity to have a bit of a change of tactics. Over the last couple of days, I've been fishing a big spread of boilies out there, which is not what I'm used to. I've caught a couple of fish off of it. However, I'm going to feel more confident in what I'm moving to, which is fishing at long range with a big bed of bait with 3 rods on it tight together, which is what I do back in England, and I seem to do really well on it. To do this, what I'm going to do is clip all 3 of my fishing rods and my spod at 30 wraps around the range sticks, which is 120 yards. By doing this and getting spoms out little and often, I feel like I can entice the fish back into the swim, and hopefully soon you'll be seeing me with a few more fish on the bank.
Well, I just had this little beauty. Been hard this morning, pressure's changed. So I put fish right next to the weed, changed from tiger nuts to boilies, and had this beauty little fish. Absolutely fantastic. Hopefully get a few more now. Here's a 30 pounder I just had, caught in a rig I showed you earlier. Used this rig a lot of times in France, so give it a go.
Right, as I said, I was in the previous swim. There wasn't really any fish showing around, so I decided to move. When you come to France, you bring everything and a kitchen sink. Moving always seems to be the last option, but sometimes it needs to be your first. If you see fish elsewhere, move on them because it can come right for you. A couple of hours in this swim, I knew I was in front of fish. Once the night came, I saw more activity, and then in the early hours of this morning, this one rattled off 26 pound 8. Very long, very lean fish, almost wild-like. Right, this is the second one of the brace I had this morning, 31 pound 8. So I'm going to get this one back and I'm going to show you the rig I caught it on and something else that might interest you. Here's something I mentioned earlier that was going to be of interest. Sometimes you hear of pikers catching carp on dead baits, and most people think it's more of a fluke, but that's not true. It's quite well known and documented that carp are omnivores and will eat any food source that's plentiful. Keith, earlier on in the week, had a fish cough up a sizable piece of roach, and I had a fish on the mat this morning, 31.8, and it also, as I unhooked it, spat out all of these. These are baby roach, some partly digested, some not, some crushed obviously in the phalanges. But it's really been noticeable that I think the carp in this particular lake are supplementing their feed by actually going through shoals of roach and baby carp. And you can tell by the way they head and shoulder, they show themselves. There's a very definite normal head and shoulders, or a normal leap, but also you get in these moments where they actually thrash the water, and I think that's because what they're doing is they're going through a shoal of small fry like this, and they're stunning them, and then they're coming back round to hoover up what's been stunned and is on the bottom. But it's really it's not an unusual thing to find small fish like this in carp, but it's not often you get such good evidence.
I spoke to you yesterday. I was going to try and bring the fish to me, but it's not happened, so I'm going to have to go to them. I'm going to head up with a couple of rods to peg 12 down the other end of the lake, where there seems to be a lot of fish holding there. The bailiff's opened a pipe and there's water rushing in, and the water's got a lot of oxygen there, and there's a lot of fish holding up there. So I'm going to get down there and get a couple of rods out, and hopefully you'll see me with a fish. Right, I've just moved into peg 12. There's fish all over me. I've just put out a couple of single hook baits in close. For the first half an hour, I'm going to leave it like that. But if I feel like I need to put out a few free offerings, I will do. But for the moment, I'm just going to sit back and hopefully I'll get a take.
Right, I'm going to show you how to set up my helicopter rig. I use the helicopter rig, or a version of it, on most of the silt-based lakes that I fish. It's also good if there's a bit of weed out there as well. You can adjust the rig accordingly, and I'm going to get into that once we've tied it. But let's start off with the actual leader material. I'm using the new Evolve leader material, and what I've done is I've already pre-cut a piece that's about 5 foot long. How I test that is I just literally pull out from arm to arm. That's about 5 feet. Now, we need just to put in a splice, and usually I would recommend to come out about a good 4 to 5 inches to start your splicing. Right, so there's my splice, and that will be able to, I can attach that either to my main line or onto my quick link that's going to attach to my lead. So I'll be putting one of these on both ends. So there's my second splice done. Now, what I want to do is I want to put on a few bits and pieces now to finish off the rig. Obviously we're going to have a lead, a clip and a buffer bead at the very bottom end of the actual rig. One thing I'd always say is leave your swivel on and don't pull the buffer bead down too tight onto the actual swivel itself. There's a reason for that, because when that plugs into the silt, you want to have a little bit of movement to allow that sit down on top of the debris. Next thing we're going to need is one of these quick link heli swivels. I'll pop that on like so. And then to finish off the rig, we're going to put on one of these Taska tungsten 8mm oval beads that are for lead core. Now these are purpose designed to pull off in an eventuality. So again, you just pop them onto your needle, and then this will be nice and snug on the actual rig, yet forgiving enough to come off, and that can be then adjusted to any level that you want. So that's the main components of the actual rig itself. So it's just then a case of adding your hook length. So what I always do, and it's something that I found that sits really well with these heli swivels, is to use, instead of using one of the smaller link covers, I'm using one of the baseline tail rubbers. They're slightly bigger. So that's going to sit on top of my hook link. So I'm just going to pop that on the needle itself. This is my rig that I have here. That's made out of Sure Link. And the reason why I use a tail rubber instead of a normal clip rubber is that it actually beds down over the barrel of the actual swivel itself, which I find is just a better presentation. And that's the rig. So here it is, the finished rig. I hope you guys can use it and put it to some good use and catch yourself some lumps. I've found this to be one of my most successful rigs in a number of years. It's my go-to rig. I fish it in any situation, on any type of bottom, and it just seems to catch and catch and catch.
Well, this is my last fish of the session. Been absolutely great fishing this week. Absolutely superb at Brocard. Really like to thank Mark, Anita and Frank for the great hospitality they've shown us and what the great place has been all week. And I hope you picked up a few things from this section, and hope to see you soon.
Hello and welcome to section 3 of Carpspiration. We're at the Newland Hall complex on the Osiers Lake. It looks cracking for a bite. It's mid-July. I want to get it started.
We've got 48 hours, neither of us have fished it before, so we're looking at various tactics, maybe a little bit of floater fishing, a little bit of stalking. We're going to see how it goes.
Without further ado, like I say, it's mid-July. We need to get a cracking, lights fading. We're going to get some rods out, get a bite, hopefully. Well, look at this little stunner. Caught this one just out the edge. Bivvy's not up. I've got one rod out, turn round after casting it out, and it's away. I've had this on the new Evolve Shore Link on little baseline bits. Made up. I've got 2 more nights ahead. I've had one straight away, blank sorted. Let's get cracking, have some more hopefully through the night. So I've got up this morning, seen a few fish. I've hooked one, but unfortunately it's weeding me up. There's a big flume of bubbles out there. I've had the rod bent now for 5 or 10 minutes, keeping a tight line. There's still bubbles coming up, the odd churn of water. So I think we're going to have to play the waiting game. Put the rod on the deck, slacken off, and hopefully it'll start taking some line. That's what we're talking about. Well, here's my prize. Patience is key. One wee bed to another. Epic battle, but she's in. £25 of Ozier's Mirror. It was a quiet night last night, but the sun's out. The fish are moving around on the top, so hopefully we're going to have a few more crackers like this to show you this afternoon.
As we mentioned yesterday, it's very weedy out there. After a little lead around last night, I could not find any clear areas, so my rig of choice is the chod rig. I've tied one up here on a leader, all ready to go. I'm gonna flick it out there and put a little bit of bait over the top, After that I will show you what my chod arrangement consists of. Here I've tied up 3 foot of our new Evolve leader. I've chosen the Evolve because it's a very unique material. It's made from woven fluorocarbon, it's very heavy, it's very supple, it's going to follow the contours of the bottom perfectly. It also has 25% stretch, giving me that little bit of cushion when playing fish. On this end here I've attached a splice ring, all ready for my baseline tungsten chod release. The next few steps are really easy. Simply thread on your baseline extended chod release, followed by your chod rig, followed by an 8mm oval bead. For my chod rig I've used a threaded bait ring. This allows me to change bait quickly and easily, and it saves the need for tying pop-ups on using bait floss. On the other end of my chod rig I've used a baseline tungsten chod bead. This counterbalances the pop-up perfectly and will lay over any low-lying weed. Now it's just simply a case of attaching a lead. Pass a splicing needle through one of the holes on our baseline tungsten extended chod release. Then pass the loop of our splice ring through the eye of the swivel on the lead. Now hook the end of the loop onto the splicing needle, close the latch and pull the loop back through the hole. Finally, secure the lead in place by putting a PVA breakdown nugget through the loop. This ensures the lead will stay on for the cast, but allowing the lead to drop off if the fish comes in contact with weed. Right, I've got both rods out there now. I'm really confident in this setup. I'm hoping it's going to produce a bite or two.
After this morning's result, mid-20, absolute cracking fish, I'm hoping I've done a bit of a snide on Lackey. Now, call it a snide, I've nicked round through the bank from him, and hopefully I'm going to put some floaters underneath these trees and catch one, sort of out of his swim a little bit. But he hasn't seen me, so we're all good. I'm going to get some bait in, let's get cracking, hopefully have another one.
Osiers on the Newlands Hall complex is a stunning little water. It's been maturing for 17 years, which means it's turned into a right little gem. You've got 8 swims all placed out nicely around the lake, each with plenty of features to fish out to. During the week, it's a little bit quieter, so you can get away with some stalking and a little bit of surface fishing. I have seen a few cruising about just below the surface, and they all do look like absolute minters. I can't wait to get amongst a few.
So I've got the rod out there within 35 seconds, believe it or not, on the bottom. I've seen them tailing up. We've got one. It looks a cracking common on a little hinge chod. Hopefully if she goes in the net, I'll be able to show you her. She looks a stunner. Nervous times, it's getting near the net now. Got a lot of weed around its head. I'm just going to try and wade out and get a bit closer. Hopefully we can get in the net first go. It's been a long time coming. They've had a few freebies, but it looks a really good fish. Hopefully we can get him in. A little white peaches and cream mainline pop up. Hoping we can get her in. This looks like she's nailed in the bottom lip. And she's ours. In she goes. Result. Well, the floater fishing died, but I'd baited a few spots in preparation of that event. I knew the weather was changing this afternoon. It's gone a bit overcast. The bait that I put down in the swim to the left, luckily I walked around the corner and there's a couple of fish, including this common, having a bit of a root around. Got the rig in place. It's a similar rig to what Mr. Lack's been using. We'll talk about that later, but look at this stunning 25-pound common. Floaty fishing's died a death over the last sort of hour. It's gone overcast, rainy, a bit windy. So I'm going to take a couple of moments out to talk to you about a rig I've been using over the last couple of months. It incorporates the new Evolve Shore Link. It's a very good hook link. I've used it for a couple of months now and had some cracking fish on it, including that one that I had last night out the corner. Unfortunately with the light fading, didn't get a chance to talk to you about it. It's a Dyneema and fluorocarbon sort of combined hook link. I like it because when you're playing fish, you get that little bit of stretch, gives you 10% stretch, which is perfect under the rod tip, especially for me when I use 3.5 pound Taska rods. In a moment I'm going to talk to you about how to tie it up and the components I use to do that. Right, to start off with, you cut off 12 inches of the new Evolve Shore Link. Here's a piece cut off, ready to rock. You then tie a 2-turned tucked blood knot to the top of the bend of the hook. Next stage. All you do is take the other end of the shore link, thread on a threaded bait ring, as you can see there. It's going to act as a small D on the hook. That will give the bait a lot more movement. At this stage you're going to be tying a knotless knot. 4 turns is plenty. So I've tied my knotless knot. It's sort of coming together now. The next thing that goes on is a baseline liner to give the hook a little bit of weight and also to make sure the hook kicks around when you get a bite. Now what you do is you put on the liner and just ease it over the knot so it's acting as a kicker. There's the hook end finished. We're now going to add on some sinkers. So sinkers are ready to go on. Simply place the braid on like so and just slide them on. Makes it easier if you moisten the braid as well. Once on, position your sinkers in place. I tend to have one a couple inches down just from the hook and another one sort of halfway down the hook link. This hook link will be around about 7-8 inches by the time I've finished. So what I tend to do, use the baiting needle and just pop it on, pop the anti-tangle sleeve on that. It's much simpler to do. All you have to do then is pull it on rather than trying to thread it through, to make things simpler. Once on, that's everything sort of ready. Next thing is to start looping it on there, ready to attach to your leg clip or your swivel. Once you've done that, bait of choice, mine is the Milky Toffee pop-up from Mainline, because I know that with the bait screw and also the line liner, it will critic balance perfect. So there's the rig from the top to the bottom. Starts off with an anti-tangle sleeve, onto the sinkers, and then onto your baseline line liner, and onto your threaded ring with a nice little bright one. That's it, on step by step. I'm going to get it out there and catch some more fish. So today's been a tricky day. Even though I've had 3 fish, we haven't really felt like we've been on them. The fish are a bit all over the place, ain't they, mate? So every bite's come within a minute of putting the rod in, believe it or not. So we're sort of gambling a little bit, packed everything up, moved out the swims we were in. We're going to start doing laps and eventually, hoping, we're going to find where the fish are going to end up tonight.
I'm in a very similar situation. I've been sitting down one end of the lake all day. There's been very little fish activity. Was a little bit unlucky this morning to pull out of a couple off the surface, but I'm hoping this roaming method is going to get us amongst a few. Without further ado, we're going to get going.
Crack on.
After that late move last night, I finally managed to find a few fish, a little bit of a clearer area, and yeah, this morning this one tore off, just over 20 pound, lovely dark fish, and it came to the trusty chod rig. We're gonna slip her back, go around and see Marcus, because I need to catch a few more. I've got some catching up to do. After that bite this morning, the fish seem to have moved up in the layers of the water. I've tried flicking some mixers about, but they're not really taking confidently enough. So my aim of attack is going to be a zig rig. I've got a bright yellow was up on here. It's going to be about 4 foot just under the surface. Hopefully I can catch one of them carp that are cruising by.
So I found a few fish a couple of minutes ago, and they're tucked up near that willow on the far bank. There's a weed bed that comes away and then drops down into a gully. Chosen setup's a choddy. I'm fishing that with a deceptive fluorocarbon, which is just allowing me to get everything sunk down nice. The problem I've got though, is with having the weed in this margin as well, I want to make sure I keep my tips up just in case they do snag on something and get cut off. Now I've got a riser light on, that's just keeping the line just slack enough so I can keep everything nice, ready for a take. I've also locked my clutch up and I've got some snag ears on just in case they do whip the rod round. So hopefully in the next 5 or 10 minutes, if they come back on, I've just spooked them on a cast, I'll hopefully nail one for the camera. So unfortunately my time at Newlands has come to an end. You've just seen me in a swim over the corner fishing a little chod into the weed bed. Unfortunately I didn't get a bite. If I'd have had 20-30 minutes more I might be able to track the fish back and probably catch one. As I say, time's come to an end, duty calls, got to go to work unfortunately. So I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Mr. Lack, and I'm hoping he's going to add from his earlier catch this morning. Without further ado, I'll see you later.
Just seen some fizzing close by this willow. Just dropped a little choddy on top. I think opportunist bites are the way to go. Marcus has caught 3 that way, so I'm going to give it half hour and then move on, find another spot. So I had this one about 20 minutes ago from a new spot I found in the margin after another move again last night. In my own fishing, I've noticed people rushing fish handling. It's something that can't be rushed. Got to take your time. As soon as the fish went in the net, I left it for just a couple of minutes to recover and get its breath back. Before bringing my mat over, I'll then get the fish out, place it in my retention sling just for another 5 minutes or so whilst I get the camera kit ready and the scales zeroed. So here's the one I had 20 minutes ago. Proper stunner, heavily plated mid-double. There's still a few fish mooching about, so I'm going to go get the rod back out. Hopefully I can nick another one before we go. Right, my time here at Osiers has unfortunately come to an end. It's been a great 48 hours. I've caught a couple of cracking fish along the way. Perseverance definitely paid off. Staying on the move, that helped me catch them extra fish. I'd just like to thank the guys over at Newlands for letting us come down and fish. I'll definitely be back, and I'll see you again soon.